name is Marco Landry and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about something that's a bit of a taboo. I'm going to talk about wiring and cleaning up that wiring harness on the archery. In my case, I'm only doing track days, I'm not racing, so I am definitely allowed to modify that harness. Some organization will not allow you to modify anything in that wiring harness, so you have to use a stock harness in order to race. The shop manual is critical in order to do this. You can see on my cabinets there, I got the various diagrams, I got the ECU pin out. And I've honestly spent a lot of time prepping for this. I printed the diagram. The diagram was not very good quality, so I had to take a magnifying glass, double check everything. Then I would come to the bike and make sure that the color and the routing of the cable would match the description on these various planes. And after that, what I did is that I've simplified the diagrams. For me, it was just a way to figure out where the cables would go, what were the colors, where I could cut the cables, where I could remove the cables. All right, tools required, guys. Basically, I'm not gonna reuse the crimps. I'm not gonna crimp anything on the bike. I'm gonna use the soldering iron or the soldering gun. So depending on what you have, I mean, both options will work. Obviously, when you have this, you will need the solder as well. I'm using lead-free solder here. You could use flux to speed up and make your soldering job easier. In my case, I don't need it. I'm just going to use like basic lead-free solder and make sure my connections are strong. Obviously, when you're working with the iron or the gun, you need to have a wet sponge to clean up the tip of the iron. Make sure you wear the safety glasses while doing this as well, so that nothing goes in your eyes. And multimeter will be required to test the circuits. You can also use a circuit tester that will do a similar job as well. I actually prefer this because it allows you to test continuity without having the battery in the bike. And I have these various connectors as well. Let's see, so I have these various connectors I'm going to be using to test the connectors itself, or the probes. I guess these are the probes that I'll be using to test the connectors. So instead of jamming this in front and trying to damage the hole of the connector, you can use these little probes and go in the back and use this for testing the continuity or the wire itself. So definitely a must when you're doing any work on these small form factor connectors. And other tools required, obviously, I mean, you'll need either, this is like state-of-the-art tool here. This is basically just a paper clip that I'm using to unhook the pins from the connectors. You can use small, a tiny screwdriver as well to push the tabs off so that you can take these cables out of the connectors. And obviously, when you take any connectors out from the ECU, you want to be able to plug that hole with these dummy plugs here. So these dummy plugs just allows you to plug that hole and make sure that there's no water, no dirt particle that will go into your ECU. So that just allows you to block off this hole. Obviously, in terms of other tools, I'm going to use this little blade here for cleaning up the harness or removing the tape. Cutting the tape, I might use the scissors, or again, just that blade. And in cutting wires, I'm going to use the side cutters as well. In terms of wrapping your harness, I'm going to say this once. A lot of people might not agree with me, but do not use electrical tape. This is junk. That's not going to keep your harness nice and secure over time. Gas and oil will not react very well with this, and your tape will not adhere to your harness or your cable. So don't use the basic electrical tape. In my case, I'm going to use this high temperature resistance tape. It's self-adhesive tape. It's polyester cloth. It's acrylic pressure adhesive. So it means that you basically wrap it on itself, and this is how it's going to stick. By itself, it doesn't stick at all, but if you just wrap it around and wrap it, just press it back here, you'll see now that I have a nice and solid adhesion. So this is basically what you want to do. You want to be able to wrap the tape on itself and press it, and it will adhere quite well. And after that, once you need to maintain or remove the tape, you can remove it, and it will keep your surface nice and non-sticky. So this is definitely the way to go when you're doing your loom. The other thing I'm going to use as well is this X-Fasten silicone tape. If I can't fit the shrink tubing for any reason on top of my cables, I'll use the X-Fasten silicone tape. Again, non-adhesive, it won't leave your cable sticky, it won't leave any residue, and it's tested for high temperature resistance as well. So definitely want to use this to wrap your harness or your wiring loom because it will make your life easier in the long run, because if you just use regular tape, it will leave a messy residue on top of your wires, so you definitely don't want that. When you're wiring as well, you will want to keep this vinyl loom tubing that was on the bike. So I kept all of this when I removed the harness. So this is going to be required when you have a cable that's routed around. So let's say you have this like this, and this cable. Let's say you have multiple cable and you want to protect this. Well, obviously this will allow you, like if you're going again around a corner, if you have a zip tie, it will protect this these wires by using this vinyl loom tubing. So definitely want to leverage this as well. So that's it, folks, for the tools. Let's go over to the bike and let's start some work. All right, we're back at the bike and ready to rock and roll. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to rely on my various simplified circuits or diagram to remove the wire, so this way I don't have to go back to shop manual multiple times. I'll just be able to rely on the reverse engineering that I did in order to figure out which wire to remove. Before I get any work done, obviously I'm going to disconnect the battery, and after that the first circuit that I'll remove is going to be the light circuit. So everything that's related to signal lights, auxiliary light, headlights, tail light, brake light, all of this will be removed, and then we'll take a pause and we'll switch to a different diagram, different circuit, but this is what I'll do first. So I'll start by disconnecting the battery, and after that we'll get going on removing this ugly mess from the bike. Alright guys, so making some progress slowly here. You can see that I've removed a bunch of wires and connectors. That was mostly for the light wiring circuits. So the headlight assembly, the tail light, the signal lights, all of this has been removed. The next step will be to start working on removing the O2 sensor circuit with the air induction solenoid plug as well, because it's no longer there with the block off plates. So I don't need that, so I'll remove this as well. And I'll do the clutch bypass as well. I have these two extra wires that are still here, and I'll just simply bypass the that clutch switch, and just fuse the two connectors together. So now, again, like I mentioned, I'll remove the kickstand switch, and I'll bypass that switch. So I'll just clean this up in the back, the wires is quite long, so I'll shorten the wire, move this toward the back, and after that I'll remove the fuse for the light circuit, and also I'll need to remove the tank and the air box again, because I need to get access to the headlight relay that I want to remove, and it's tucked under the tank. What you currently see on the screen is the main wiring diagram found in the shop manual. This is what I use as a reference to draw my my 5 simplified diagrams. So I have the light diagram, the diagram for the fan, the clutch bypass diagram, the kickstand bypass diagram, and finally I also have the O2 sensor and the air induction solenoid diagram. So those 5 simplified drawings will be accessible from my website, so I'll have a link in the description below that you can use if you want to download this as a reference. But obviously the goal of this video is not to show you how and where to cut the wires, but instead I want to share some tips on how to tackle the most challenging task. So this is the headlight relay that I was talking about. That's hidden in the front of the bike. So it's just basically clipped on a little piece of rubber inside. And in this case, I don't need it. So I'll remove those 3 wires and remove the relay, and I'll have more room in front to shove my keyless my Woodcraft keyless adapters here, so I know they take a bit more space, so I'll have room to put this in there without having to push the wires around. So it's going to be a lot easier, nice, a lot cleaner, and yeah, I guess that's it. So I'll get rid of this, and after that I'll start doing the bypass switch for the clutch and for the kickstand. Alright, so for these type of connectors, they're fairly easy to disassemble. Normally what I do is I take one of these little flat blade screwdrivers and I press just below the pin. There's a hole, and we won't be able to see it there, but I made a little drawing here. So this is the pin here, and there's a little tab here. So what you want is with your screwdriver, press here at the bottom, and with your fingers in the back, you're pulling on the wire while you're pressing on this, and it should release that pin. And then when you have your fingers in the back pulling and you're pressing on the tab at the same time, it will allow you to unhook that wire. So fairly easy, it just takes a bit of patience. What I would recommend is that if you have any areas where there's some empty slots, just try to look at the mechanism and the plastic tab, and you'll be able to figure out fairly easily how to remove that. All right, so I'm back at the multi-display connector, or the dashboard connector, and I've been messing around with this for quite a while now, and I guess for those MX34 connectors, the best way to unpin it is that, in my case, I want to remove 3 different wires. So there's like a yellow wire that I've already removed. There is a green wire and a brown wire that I want to remove. So I want to remove these extra 2. So the 3 wires I'm removing are the wires for the left turning signal, the right turning signal, and also the headlights. This retaining clip at the top will retain everything in place. So in order to remove the pins, you need to take your screwdriver in this little opening here at the top, and right here, and once you flip it up, it will increase the distance between the gray and the black plastic here. So you can see here that my retaining clip is up. you'll see here on the side, it's easy to see that it's up, but if you're not sure, you can gently put your screwdriver, your tiny screwdriver on the side, and just push these retaining pins a little bit so that it goes up. So you can see here it's a bit higher, and that's more than enough once you get to that type of height. So let's do this on the other side here, where I can just push this up here a little bit, and you can see now I have a bit of a gap. And after that, once you identify the pins or the wires that you want to remove, so in my case it's number 2 and number 3 at the bottom here. So basically where the screwdriver will go is right here at the bottom. So this is where it will go in here. So you can see here a little bit where it goes in. So it's the bottom row. So you can see now it's the bottom row, right? So it's a bit tricky at first, but you simply insert a screwdriver, push it in as far as it will go. Once you get some resistance, push a bit more, and then after that you can just simply pull on that wire. So it takes a bit of pulling quite hard, but just be patient with it. And let's do one more here. Since I spent so much time on that pin removal, I figured I'd talk about this a bit longer, because I really struggle with it. I did a lot of research on the internet. I found it took me forever, first of all, to find out what type of connector it was. I'm still not sure if it is in fact the MX34 from JAE, but it looks like it is. And after that, I was trying to figure out, the type of tools required to do this and to remove those pins. So I went ahead and I just went on Amazon Prime and I ordered a kit of these little pin removal tools. So I mean, I got 40 something of these items, and it seems to work well on all my other connectors, because I managed to change a few things on my R6 this morning. On the regular connectors on the R6, it was working fine. I had no issues at all. But for some reason, that darn connector for the speedometer on the R3, I could not remove those pins at all. So I mean, I played with a retaining clip quite a bit. I made sure it was high enough and it was no longer retaining. And I've tried multiple of these little adapter or pin removal tools. Nothing was really working well. I then tried a needle, really a strong needle, but fairly thin, and I was able to put it in that small hole, but it was not flat enough, so I couldn't unhook the pin. So I found out at the end of the day, the best tool was really what I started with 2 days ago. the tiniest screwdriver that I had in my toolkit. That was the best option by far to try to remove those pins. The 2 remaining cables here will be for the clutch bypass. So I'm gonna shorten this quite a bit, bring this towards the back of the bike, and I'll bypass the clutch switch by just simply connecting those 2 wires together, and I'll be able to get rid of that extra connector here. A lot of this was mostly for the aim controls and the lights, so obviously this is no longer required, so we'll be able to clean this up as well. In terms of other connectors, I got the solenoid connector and the O2 sensor connector that I'll be able to remove as well. With this one, I'll just basically remove the cable here and remove this one from the solenoid connector that are interconnected together. And in the back of the bike, I'll obviously have to go to the ECU and remove the cables or the wires that are coming from the O2 sensor to the ECU. I'll put a dummy plug inside these holes to make sure that no water or dust particles go in and cause me some grief in the long term. And then the other thing that we will do as well is that these 2 wires are for the light relay. So I'll be removing this as well from the ECU. and this one obviously goes to fuse box, so I'll remove this wire and also remove the fuse as well. Same thing for that brown wire that's remaining here. This is from the light circuit, so we will go directly to the fuse box and remove this the fuse and this extra wire. There was an extra black wire here that goes back to ground, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this one. I'm not sure if I'm going to remove it completely or keep it, maybe if I need to ground something else with a different circuit in the future. This is the kickstand switch, so I've bypassed it with this, but this is quite clunky and quite big, so I'm going to shorten this, and it comes here in the back, and there's like a V here, so there's like two different looms. So I'm going to use this, I'm going to shorten this cable, and I'm going to bypass it here in the back of the bike. So that's it, folks. That's a recap of what will be done next. And everything else has been done and rewired. In certain cases, you can see here that I've used the tape for the splice. And I also use some shrink tubing for certain areas as well. Bypass, the bypass is here actually. So this is where I've rerouted everything so that it would be nice and clean. And my clutch bypass is here. And everything else has been tucked in and cleaned up pretty nicely. So the only thing remaining now, as you can tell, are these extra wires that are going to the ECU. So I'll remove the ECU. I've unplugged the battery already. So I'll unpin all these cables, and then I'll insert the dummy plugs so that there's no debris or corrosion or water going in. So I just removed the ECU, and it occurred to me that this white plastic thing here is the retainer. So you won't be able to remove any of those pins without popping this retainer off. And actually, when I say popping it off, it's basically you need to retract it. So you can see now it's retracted. There's a little gap between the pins and that white thing there. So normally that white retainer is flush with the plastic. So in order to pop it out, it's fairly easy. You just need to be able to use a small screwdriver and pop the side here, and the retainer will go towards the right of the screen here. So that's how you do this. You do this on both sides, and this little retainer will move. So take your time. You don't need to force it. It's fairly easy. I just put my screwdriver, just wiggle it a bit, and normally it pops on one side, and I do the same thing on the other side. And after that, I'll be able to just push the pins by inserting a paper clip in these holes and extracting the right wires. And you can see there's 6 rows. So normally the row with it almost looks like a cross. So this is where you want to insert the screwdriver, and when you insert the screwdriver in that row, it will allow you to push the pin. So there's a little retaining pin that will hold this in place. So when you're removing those pins, you'll see here that there's a little retaining clip. So that little retaining clip here is the tricky part. So this is what needs to be unlatched from the connector. So in the connector, you just have to go in and you have to pry the little tab, the plastic tab, away from this pin. So that's what I was saying earlier. So if you're prying this away from, or if you're trying to pin away from the plastic, then you can pull that connector back. So basically, what I'm doing is that I'm inserting my screwdriver in the hole that looks like a cross, and then you go in. When you get a bit of resistance, you pop the connector up, and then you pull with your finger and you'll be able to pull this wire out. So it takes a bit of practice, but definitely doable. You just have to be patient. The last step here is to try to put these little pin into the ECU harness. Okay, so normally I just take a little pair of tweezers like this. I'll insert the pin into that hole and just push it until you hear that little clicking sound, and it gets flush with the back of the connector here. Then after that, once you're done, don't forget to push that retaining clip back on. This will make sure that none of the wires are coming out. Yeah, so you can see the little paint mark here. So these little paint mark just allows you to see if the wire is at the right location. So this is a good indication, again, once you're done, to make sure that everything is okay. And this is what I was trying to explain earlier as well. So what you're doing when you're removing the pins is that you can see here there's like a hole that's shaped in the way of almost like an arrow at the top. So what you want is to insert your screwdriver into that top hole, and your retaining pin is in the hole below. So what you want is put your screwdriver in, and there's a little plastic latch in there. So what you want is like lift with your screwdriver that little latch so that you can remove your pin. So while you're doing this, you're simply pulling on the wire in the back, and you keep wiggling your screwdriver until you can lift that pin, and then you'll be able to pull the wire. So make sure that you pull at the same time as you wiggle your screwdriver or your paper clip in the connector in front. And again, make sure that your retaining clip has been loosened up, and there's a nice little gap. You can see here there's a little gap at the bottom. So you want to have this type of gap to make sure that you can remove your connectors. I was debating whether or not to remove the relay for the fan. And after thinking about this and considering all my options, I decided to remove the relay for the fan, for the radiator. So basically, in order to do this, this is the relay itself. It's in the receptacle or the connector for the relay. And I've just basically, it's all assembled in 3 different pieces. So what's happening here is that this is clip in here, and this one is clip in here as well. So what I'm gonna do is remove those different wires. As I did before, I've traced the diagram. So you see here, I have my little diagram. I'm going to remove, while the fan is already been removed, I'm going to remove the relay, remove the connection to the ECU, like just that wire, and I'll also remove the red wire and the fuse from the power source. So this is going to be gone, this is going to be gone, this is going to be gone, and I'll just like reconnect my wires here. So those the red and white wires, the 2 red and white wires that are coming in the circuit, these are actually here. So these 2 wires will be shortened, and I'll bring them closer to my junction point so I don't have extra wire hanging around. And before I tape my harness, obviously I'm gonna remove all of these extra wires. I'm gonna leave these 2 connected for now, and I'll put the tank back on. I'll put the air box back on, and I'll put the battery, and I'll crank the bike, make sure everything is starting properly. And if it does, then I'll remove the tank and remove the air box again, and then I'll retape my harness properly, and then I'll be done with that process. So in order to disconnect the wires from that specific connector, it's fairly easy. And I find that for this, what works really well, again, is a small screwdriver or I have like a really strong needle here, like, you know, like very sturdy needle. And what you want to do is just go at the top of your connector, in between the two the two little metal connection, or two metal tabs, and you push up to push the plastic tab. And once you do this, you're able to pull in the opposite direction and remove that connector. All right, so basically what's happening is that you have this connector here, and your needle will go in between those two tabs, and there's a little plastic retainer right here. So that retainer is preventing, you know, the wire and the connector from going out. So what you want to do is you want to come in with your, you know, your screwdriver, or your little piece of metal, or whatever you're going to use, and you want to go in here and just push up so that you lift that tab that's right here. So basically, again, just go in between those two metal grooves, and you come here and push up, and you're able to pull out. When you're pulling out, obviously you want to put your fingers against the plastic so that you have a lot more leverage. And it's not really like, you know, like stiff. You just need to be able to have the right tool to go in and push up, right? So you want to be able to push up like this and pull at the same time. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to disconnect all the connectors and do the same thing. All right, so everything has been disconnected, so my relay is no longer there. I just have the wires, but before I just have the wires here, but before I remove all the wires and I retape my harness, like I said earlier, I'm going to test everything. And one thing I'm going to do now is that I'm going to remove the fuse for the fan, which is the last one in your fuse compartment. So it's the 7.5 amp fuse. Then we'll do some testing without the fuse, and I'll remove the remaining wires after I'm sure that everything is working properly. So we're going to cap this back on. I'm going to leave this on the side here, and now all of this is ready to get the air box back again, and the air box, and also the tank. So I'll turn the camera off. I'll go off camera for a few minutes. I'll reassemble all of this. All right, so moment of truth. I've finished all the wiring now. So now I'm in a state where everything should be exactly like I want it to be. And again, before taping everything and recovering all the looms, I want to make sure that it's going to start, because I don't want to complete the project and then realize that I have to unwrap everything. So I'm going to test. I'm going to make sure it's working fine by starting it. If I don't have any errors or anything weird on my tachometer or my multi-display, then I'll know that everything's okay. So I'll give it a quick start, and if it's running fine, I'll stop it and I'll start the wrapping of the harness. Good sign so far. Alright, so everything's working. I'll pause the camera again, I'll remove the tank, remove the air box again, and I'll be back to start the wrapping of the harness. Last thing I need to do is to solder these two cables together. So what I did is I stripped a small portion for each cable, or for each wire. And I have some shrink tubing here. So I'm going to take the smallest one that will fit over the cable, which will probably be this one here. So you can see I got a wide arrangement here of shrink tubing. Basically, we're just going to put this on top. So it's fairly tight, so it won't have to shrink too much. So what you want to do is like take your wire like this and push them together, and then just squeeze and just do a little bit of a twist. And then after that, what we're going to end up doing is just soldering this part. So this way it's nice and clean, and you don't have like a really big area to solder. I put some foil paper underneath so that it's going to protect if there's some solder that falls down. So once I'm ready to go, I'm just gonna put the iron underneath and just let it warm up the wires for a little bit. And once it's nice and warm, we'll just push the solder on top, and hopefully it's going to go through and fall down and be attracted by the iron. All right, so cable's been soldered, and it's solid connection. Now I just slip or just push the shrink tube on top of it. So we'll just use the heat gun and warm it up, and always start from middle going outwards. So let's do this. All right, so this is nice and clean. I'll just put an extra layer of silicone tape on top of it to give it more protection. And after that, obviously, it's going to be in the tubing as well. So it's going to be nice, solid, and safe. The bike is ready. I've cleaned up all the extra wires, so there's no more extra wires here. You can tell throughout the bike here, throughout the length of the bike, nothing has been wrapped, but I've tested everything first, make sure everything was okay. And I got a nice and clean harness now with no extra connectors, no extra wires. I started taping the back of the bike with the harness tape here, so you can see I've tried to clean this up a bit and get organized. And the last thing that I did that I want to update you on is that I've labeled some of my connections or my splice here. I've labeled this like as kickstand, bypass, and I also labeled another splice here with the clutch bypass. And this is just to help my future self to make sure that if I ever have troubleshoot, I won't have to try to look through my notes, and I'll be able to find out where everything is. So the next step is to just take some of these plastic tubing and position them properly, figure out where I'm going to put them, and start taping everything properly. And before I do this, I'll remove the tank, I'll remove the air box as well. I'll probably get some of these cables outside of the frame here, so I have a bit more room to work. So normally when I'm wrapping as well, you can see here I've started adding some of the strip of tape, just a few wraps around the harness so that I can do everything from front to back in a few minutes. But sometimes you'll have some excess wire and it all gets bunched up. So in my opinion, the best practice is try to loop it like this and just wrap it around the excess. So this way you don't have some kinks or some ridiculously tight bent radius. So normally I try just to wrap it around like this a few times, and then I'll tape it like this nice and tight, so that this way, if you need some extra slack, you can always untape and you can pull these two wires towards the front or the back. It gives you some room to move things around when or if needed. Also, you'll notice that I had some zip ties there before, just as an indicator of where the splits were. I'm also using them when I'm by myself and the harness is still on the bike, because I would probably need an extra set of hands to do this properly. So normally I'll put some zip ties, I'll rearrange all my cables, I'll tape, a few wraps, like I said earlier, make sure everything is nice and organized. And after that, once the tape is there, I can remove my zip ties. It makes your life a lot easier. So that's another tip that I thought I would share with you guys. When I'm taping here, you can see I've taped the front of the multi-display harness, and I didn't tape this area here. because I'm gonna put this on top here, that piece of vinyl tubing, and I've taped a little bit further and a little bit further here, and then that's gonna go on top here, and I'll tape on top of that portion here, so the top portion will be taped. I'll do the same thing here, and I'll probably just tape a few areas in the middle as well. So this way it gives me some extra reinforcement and protects the wire from the bending here and the moving all the time. So same thing here, you can see that I've taped just enough. I didn't tape all the way. I've opened this vinyl area here, like the tubing, and I'm going to put the tubing on top of this, and I'll retape this so that it's nice and clean, and this will be protected from the elements and also from any abrasion that might occur because of the frame or you know, maybe the bodywork. So this way it will be protected and nice and solid. So I'll do the same thing throughout the rest of the harness, but that was just to give you an idea of how I'm normally doing this. So you can see that everything is reattached cleanly on the side of the bike. I've put some of the rubbers or the vinyl protectors underneath, and I tape on top of it. So these vinyl protectors, like I mentioned earlier, are here to protect against the rubbing and the erosion on the side. So I have this at all these anchor points. I put some of that vinyl and I retape on top of it. Now, if everything goes well, that should last me for quite a long time. Everything has been taped, harnessed properly or loomed properly. And you can see in the back here, I've taped all of this as well. There's a vinyl underneath that tape that covers all the wires. And you can see again all the anchor points here. I couldn't put a piece of vinyl here because of these extra connectors on the side. So what I did, I put a bit of extra tape so it's nice and sturdy and it won't damage the wires. There's a lot less wires. You can see all the extra wires here that are laying on the floor. So this is what I managed to remove from the bike after this operation. So definitely a worthwhile job, and the final results are quite nice, I must say. I've been experiencing with different tapes. Initially, when I started the video, I was telling you that I was going to use this this tape from Amazon. It's polyester cloth tape, and it's self-adhesive. So when you stick it on itself, it stays sticky. But when you remove it, there's no residue. And it's rated for high temperature. However, high temperature for this company was about 100 degrees Celsius. So I did a bit more research, and Tessa has a really awesome tape. This is what I've been using. I remove all of the tape that I used initially, and I only kept it in the tail of the bike because there's not a lot of extreme temperature and should not have any chemicals in the back of the bike. So for everything from the front of the bike, especially under the tank close to the engine, I've been using the Tessa. This is the 51036. So 51036 Tessa tape for wiring, and it's a great product, a really great product. It works really well. It's sticky, and you can easily remove it if you need to remove it for service or maintenance, or a few times I wrapped some stuff. I said, I don't really like it this way, so I had to remove it. That was quite easy to remove, and no residue on the bike. The one from Amazon works well as well. It was a lot less expensive, obviously, but doesn't have the same resistance to abrasion, and yeah, I mean, not the same temperature ratings as well. So great product, probably not recommended for under the tank. So I had different width. I didn't even use a larger width of that the tape from Amazon, or that polyester cloth tape. I'm sure it works well. Initially, I was hoping that this automotive tape, harness tape, would work well because it's vinyl tape. It's from a company called Vongol. So It works okay. Didn't have the same result as the Tessa tape. So in my opinion, Vongo is good, but not great for the bike anyway, for my liking. If you'd rather have more of a vinyl finish, this is definitely an option. So you can see this is more shiny, this is like more like a plastic finish, and this is more like a polyester or cloth finish. So this is the Tessa, this is the Vongo. Not as good in my opinion. The X-Fasten tape, I've used it for when I solder. I put the shrink tubing if it was possible. And on top of the shrink tubing, I also use this because I think it gives this extra resistance and it adheres quite well. The only drawback of this one, it's much thicker than regular tape. So when you're taping, you'll have a little bump in your wire, obviously, because it's so thick. But nothing but good things to say about it. Again, if you have to remove it, it won't stay sticky. So definitely a good option as well. For your splices, not for the full harness, obviously. And the temperature rating for this one are quite good as well. And I'm sure that some people will ask me why I don't use the regular electrical tape. It's just because it makes a mess, and it's not doesn't have resistance for oil and chemicals and gas. So especially under the gas tank, when you remove your gas tank, there's always some gas leaking. The electrical tape doesn't have the same resistance chemical, and again, it's going to leave some messy residue behind. If you do, however, need to use some electrical tape or vinyl tape, I would strongly recommend the Scotch Super 88 because this is probably much better quality than the regular electrical tape. The Super 33 is really good as well, but super sticky. But again, high resistance to temperature as well. I've used the Super 88 in the past, so this is a Super 88. And when I'm at the racetrack, I have this in my trailer, in my truck, just in case I have to, do some quick repair. So this is much better quality than the typical electrical tape that you'll find at the dollar store. So definitely a good option if you plan on doing some quick repairs on your bike, or just patching up something for a couple of days. Super 88 would be my option for my bike. So enough about tape. The other thing that's been interesting for this as well is try to figure out the right angle. So when you're taping, sometime I wasn't thinking about it initially, so I was taping and I was like splicing so that the splice would go one way. But after that, when I reassembled everything, I realized that the splice had to go the other way. So you can always bend it a bit. So I bent it and just retaped so that it would keep that same direction. And this way, there's no stress on your wires. So that's one thing that I didn't notice, or that I didn't mention earlier. So a good point to remember when you're doing the work on the bike. A few comments with respect to the electrical circuit on the bike. It's fairly easy to do some electrical work on the bike. You just have to understand there's four main components that you have to keep in mind when you're doing any type of electrical work on your vehicle. So the first one will be the load, right? And the source. So the source can be your battery in this case. The load could be, let's say, a light. And then there's going to be a control device, which can be like a switch, an on-off switch. That's going to be a control device. A relay as well could be a micro switch, an internal switch, and also you will have your protection, or your circuit protection, which is your fuse. So these are the main units in your schema. And also keep in mind that when you're doing this, you have to go from your positive to your negative. So when I was working with these various circuits, that's what I was trying to do basically, right? Trying to figure out where's the power coming in and how does it return back to your negative or to your ground. So I would strongly recommend that for those of you who are not too familiar with this, arm yourself with one of these, these wiring diagrams, and after that, trace it out, simplify it as much as possible, try to understand it. there's a lot of great resources on the web that will explain this stuff. Try to understand what the relay does, what the diode does, and after that, it's really understanding the basic concept of a circuit from end to end. So that's not very complex. So again, thanks for watching. My name is Marco Landry, and I'll see you soon.